My name is Finlay Macleod. I come from Scotland, and really I would like to thank everyone involved in allowing me to speak on total immersion, but it's a very different kind of total immersion that I'm going to be talking about today. I would like first of all to thank ILI and INE in particular for all the help and encouragement that she's given over the years to what we've been doing. Right, so we start. We have a course that works entirely through the Gaelic language. It's for the home. We have different kinds of courses. We have ordinary courses, and we have courses where we wish to put the language into the home. We know that it will not occur with normal courses. It's just impossible for it to occur with a normal, natural, everyday course, simply because the parents, if they don't have the language, cannot take that language from normal, run-of-the-mill courses. Most adult courses are really run-of-the-mill. They're not specialist at all. If you're wanting to put a language into the home, you need to be able to talk about the language you're going to use with a child or with other adults. None of that language, or very little of that language, can be found in any school. Sorry to say it. They say that 10% of the language of the school can come into the home. Only 10%. 90% and over of the language of the home can come into the school. Now, you would have thought that with an immersion course that we learn all the language that we'd need to talk to a child. We would have thought that if a child went to a school and learned the language in an immersion school, that it would be easily transferred into the home. Sadly, that's not the case. What you have is that the child learns academic language. An academic language is about work. It's not about the social language of the home. It has little or nothing to do with the social language of the home. And babies, if you're talking or wanting to talk about intergenerational transmission, a school will not provide anyone the way to set up, whether it is an Indigenous school or whether it is a Gaelic language school or any other school. I'm sad to say all the school does is open the door for people to learn the language. It would be like expecting a school, an immersion school, that just because a child went to an immersion school, they could play the piano without any difficulty at all, without any training at all, without anything to do with normal, natural situations of the home. If you were bathing a child, or if the child woke up at 3 a.m, would you know what to say to the child if you didn't learn the language connected to it? Would you learn or would you know the language of feeding a baby, be it on the breast or be it in any other way? Of course you wouldn't. Why would you? Would you know how to be a woodworker just because you went to an immersion school and never learned anything of these skills? Of course you wouldn't. Why would you? You are talking about specialist courses. When you are talking about the language of the home and of the community and even of the playground. If the child hasn't learned the language of the playground, the language stays within the 4 walls of the school. Why people expect that simply sending their child to an immersion school will produce the next generation or intergenerational transmission, I've no idea. The Gaelic language was in our community for 150 years after English language education came into our community. 1872, our language was thrown out of the school and English was taken in. The first generation didn't learn English to use in the home. The second generation didn't do it. The third generation didn't do it. The fourth generation didn't do it. The fifth generation didn't do it. And suddenly the sixth generation has taken everything into English. It doesn't happen by chance. None of it happens by chance. But there are other things as well. We do the course called Gaelic in the Home because we want to put the language into the home. It's not going to happen by magic. Forget it. It is not going to happen in any way other than creating the environment for that to happen. Now, over the last 6 months, I've been really concerned about the large numbers of people who tell us, oh, they live in San Francisco, or they live in New York, or they live in England, or they live in anywhere else, and they have no access to learning the Gaelic language. Well, after watching a program about Helen Keller on television, who was both deaf and dumb, but became an international star because there was a teacher a generation before who had learned how to communicate with children that were deaf and dumb. She became an overnight success. It was quite amazing that for thousands of years, people didn't know how to communicate with children who were deaf and dumb. So after watching that program, it really struck me. How can we develop a language program, not a social language program of putting the language into the home, but an ordinary program for adults to learn, wherever they were in the world? It didn't really matter where they were. And also, where could we do it, or how could we do it without any tutors? How could we, I didn't want to be at the end of a telephone or at the end of Skype or anything else. How could we get 15,000 students who could learn the language over a 3-year period without me or a teacher being involved? What were the ways that we could actually do it? How could we do it? Well, the reasons why are very simple, because people are shouting all the time, oh, I really would like to learn that language, but I have no teacher, or I would like to learn that particular dialect, and I have no teacher. How do we do it? How on earth do we do it? We have about 15 categories of students who really have no access to our courses. There are many of the students, they learned Gaelic when they were small and lost it when they went to school. The English school was overwhelming that they lost the language. There are those who are 80 years of age, 90 years of age who want to learn it or who want to relearn it. How could they do it? How could we do it without teachers? How can we do it without tutors? And of course we have many languages, minority languages, and Gaelic is a minority language of 60,000 people, who really would want to see the numbers increase. But without teachers around, how can we actually do it? How is it possible to learn a language without teachers being involved? Actually, it's not as difficult as you think. And the first thing that I would ask you to consider, what are the resources in your own community that have the recordings that have been done over 50 or 60 or 70 years and are sitting in all the cupboards all the drawers and everywhere else. Why aren't they being used? What's the point in collecting stories? What's the point in collecting conversations for them to be sitting in university corners and in lobbies and in big boxes all over the place? If we know how to do it, you can pass a language on quite easily without any teacher being around. It would really shock you how easy it is. Really shock you. So what are the things that you have to do? Well, you first of all need to know how to prepare a course for yourself, because it's all about learning on your own. It's your own motivation, you are the one that's in charge. You can learn it through the night, it's so flexible, you can learn it through the day. And if you are very fortunate like we are, in Scotland, we have 40,000 hours of recorded material. In fact, altogether, I think we have 100,000 hours of taped or recorded material in places where the dialect has already died. That language is living in corners. It's living in universities. Why? What on earth is the point of having a university stacked up with all different languages and we're not even using it? What's the point of it? We are very fortunate in Scotland that over the last 10 years there have been something like 20 people putting these recordings onto the computer so that you can get hold of them at any time. Now, we're not even halfway through the recordings that have been done. There are thousands of hours in the Gaelic language community in Nova Scotia. There are collections in Harvard University. There's collections in Australia, New Zealand, in Toronto, all these places. Yet they're going to waste. Why are they going to waste? What is it that's wrong with it? Why aren't we asking Bill Gates, who's so interested in minority languages, why aren't we asking him to put $1 billion into actually resuscitating languages and reviving them rather than putting linguists into dictionaries? I'm not suggesting that dictionaries aren't important, but the spoken word is more important than anything else. A family that passes a language on to the next generation, you have another 50, 60, 70 years of it. A dictionary can sit in a corner. You can actually spend £1 million preparing a dictionary and the language dying among older people at the same time. What's the use of it? What is the use of it? Now, over that last 6 months, when we started around Easter time of this year, we thought it'll only take about 3 months, really, to put this course together. We have all the ingredients, very easy ingredients, to create a course. We can take back a dialect if we really want to. A dialect be it on the east coast of Scotland or the south of Scotland, we can take them back. So what are the things and what are the ingredients that we actually need? Well, we are fortunate in lots and lots of different ways. We have a television and a radio channel. The radio channel is by far the most important to us in terms of language revival. And the reason for that is that we have day-to-day programs that start from 7:30 in the morning and finish at 11 o'clock, 5 days per week and 4 hours on a Saturday. And 6 hours on a Sunday. But what we need are people who converse. If we are wanting to learn a language from scratch, number of things that we have to do. We have to have conversations where 2 or more people are talking. No point in just narrating. That can go on later on. That can happen later on. So what do we need? We need 2 recorders. That is what we need. You can use your telephone if you want. You can, whatever it is, you have 300 or 400 hours of recorded space on your telephone, if not more. But we need 2 telephones. We need to know what kind of material we actually want. Is there a particular dialect, or what do we want? We find that the easiest and best way of a person picking up a language is if you have it on the radio. We are very fortunate. There are many programs that we can choose from. Many programs. There's a program that goes out at 7:30 in the morning until 9 o'clock, and it's the same schedule, 5 days a week, 10 different topics or 12 different topics, and about 1,600 words within that program, that one program. And it's related to today. But it doesn't have to be that way. It can be recordings that were made with your elders or with other people 60 years ago. But you need 2 people to converse, so that there are questions and answers and all the other things taken up. You also require to have a schedule. And that schedule is how long it takes to learn. Now, as far as we are concerned, it takes 3 years to learn Gaelic in this way. It's a general course. It's not a specialist course. It's a very general course. And what you do is, after you've prepared and collected all the information, the first 15 days, you listen to that program each day for an hour and a half. If you can do 3 hours or 4.5 hours, even better. You tape it and you listen to it for 15 days. Be it once a day, twice a day, 3 times a day. 1,500 words in sentences and in other ways. It's really quite a lot. And then the second 15 days, you listen and you speak into the second recorder. You listen and you speak in. Now you do 3 or 5 seconds or 3 or 7 seconds of listening, and then you speak into it. Even if you don't understand a word, it doesn't matter. Language learning is not about understanding everything at the beginning. These things come about. It's like something coming out of the water. You can pick out different words. And there's certainly in terms of news programs, there's always cues. Mr. Trump, when you're talking about it in Gaelic, Mr. Trump did this or that or the next thing. The word Mr. Trump comes up in a Gaelic sentence. Or the thing in terms of Westminster, in terms of politics. So you have all different cues that you can actually pick. This is why we put the course together, because not only is it important for us to tell you how long it will take, but also the problems you're going to have, and the stages of development that you're going to have, and the frustrations, the real deep frustrations. And the best thing of all, that you can surprise your friends and your family by doing this all on your own and then suddenly coming out and speaking. Really great thing to do. You can do it during the night, during the day, in the evening. The first 15 days you can do in the car. Please don't do the second 15 days in the car. The first 15 days you can do it in the car. You can do it at work, if you're going from work, if you're on a bus, if you're on a train, wherever. Some days you won't be able to do it. But really it's about 30 to 45 times a week if it can be done, listening to that same program. Listen to it. You're not going to learn by switching on the radio or switching on your computer. In fact, that's where we get all the programs, through the computer, if they live in Alaska or if they live in London or if they live in wherever, Dubai or Hong Kong. It doesn't really matter. Through the computer. But if there are minority languages with 10 or 15 or 20 people, it's so important to get access to the material that's already there. Why are you not looking for it? Why are you not using this incredible resource that's around. Unless, of course, none of your language is taped in any way. If it's not taped, then it's time to start. Time to start. But you need 2 people, at least 2 people for the conversation. There is also the aspect of, we do that for 3 months, 1 program every month, and then the 4th month, you have 10 days, 5 days of listening and 5 days of speaking into the second recorder. Now that's from the very first month that you had. The second month you do the same with the next 10 days, and the third month you do the same. And you will see and hear how you come on. If you have programs on your radio, it's really easy after about 3 months to go and check on how you're actually doing with understanding what's being said. It really is there for you. It's amazing just what's there. Now, we look at it about for a 3-year period. After 18 months, if it's not happening for you, then really you have to look at what you're doing. It's your motivation, it's your doing, it can be done. And we start without any translation. No translation involved. No reading, no writing. We are wanting you to speak. The skills of reading and writing have very little to do with speaking. Really very, very little to do with it. It is so important that we start creating a new generation of adults. This can't be done by children. And adults have the influence over children. Children don't have the influence over adults. It's a myth to think that if you send your children to a Gaelic language school, that they're suddenly going to come home and speak to you. They don't have the language of that environment. How can they? Not possible. So forget about thinking about schools taking your language back into your community. It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. The language that's used in your community and in your home is different from the school. The school has got to be there. But if you're ever talking about seeing your language being around in 100 years or 200 years, it's adults that make the difference, not children. How could they? They are children. They don't have influence over your home. You have. You are the motivators. You are the people that make the difference. And can I tell you one other thing that we have found? That adults learn at least 10 times faster than children. We've always been told that it's children that learn faster than adults. Rubbish. You count the hours that a child is in school, in an immersion school. They're 30 hours a week in our situation. That's 1,200 hours a year. 7 years, that's almost 12,000 hours. And that's only in the first 7 years without talking about the preschool. A child, before they start to talk or are talking reasonably well at the age of 3, have already been either listening or speaking for about 11,000 hours. No adult in any sane mind, any sanity whatsoever, will spend 11,000 hours before they start speaking or speaking well. Most adults, if you create the environment, can speak really well within 500 hours, extremely well within 500 hours, if you work on particular methodologies. And translation usually adds about 6 to 8 times the time it takes to actually learn. So this course is not about translation. It's about learning to read. It's about learning to speak, not learning to read and write. Writing. reading comes after you speak. And it's quite easy to do it. All you do is you get tapes and you get books. And if you already speak the language, first of all, it's so very easy to learn to read as an adult. And after you learn to read, you then start writing. Grammar doesn't come into it until very long after that. Can I also take up another point? And that is, in our situation, many people complain that Gaelic speakers or elders or older people will not help you in terms of learning Gaelic. Now, the courses that we have, all of them are about adults going to other people who speak the language. But there are a number of do's and don'ts that you have to do with it. Most of our 60 years and over age group cannot write the Gaelic language. So the first thing that you do, that you make sure that no one who goes near them does, is ask about grammar. We've had a situation, or I had a situation about 20 years ago when a friend who was a friend at that time, who was in university, said that he would really like to speak with older people who spoke Gaelic because he thought that Gaelic was much better than anyone else. Now, I told him beforehand, I spent probably 10 hours lecturing him that the one thing he didn't do was talk about grammar. The person that he was going to meet could put any of the university lecturers to shame in terms of the spoken language. So I said, please do not bring up grammar. If you want to do that, then you go to a teacher who is very knowledgeable about grammar. So I took him to the house, and the lady was waiting and had tea and other things ready for him. And she asked me to stay because she didn't know what was going to, how things were going. I'd spoken on the telephone to both of them. Anyway, I stayed in the kitchen and she went into the sitting room. I was going to stay there for about half an hour. He was going to be there all day, talking about all different kinds of things. And she came rushing out. And she said, why did you make me so ignorant looking? I said, how? He said the first thing he did was ask about grammar. Oh, I said, my goodness. He said, I don't want to go and speak to that person ever again. Don't want him. Don't want him in my house. He's made me feel really ignorant. Do not do that to any person. The other thing was, he could read and write, but he couldn't speak. So the things that he was asking was so out of bounds, yet he had agreed over a period of a week that he wouldn't do these things. She has never taken anyone else in to use Gaelic with, other than her own family. He destroyed it not only for himself, but he destroyed it for everyone else in the community that wanted to learn the language. She has beautiful Gaelic, beautiful, amazing. She won't work with anyone. She just will not do anything with anyone. She didn't want to feel ashamed. Yet that man shamed her no end. So part of the course that we have here is how do you get in contact? How do you speak? What are the things you do? What is the etiquette in terms of talking to elders? We would never suggest that a person without anything, any Gaelic at all, go to speak to an elder. Really, we would not do that at all. Unless that elder was a teacher and used to people who had nothing at all. It was not only did he disgrace me, my aunt, sorry, not my aunt, this lady, he disgraced me for years. We couldn't send anyone to any person because of what he did. So please, it's so important that if you're involved in anything like this, that you actually know what to do. Now, the course itself, as I was saying, is really what we are doing is connected to the radio. But, as we said earlier, there are enormous collections on tape that no one is using. Hopefully it's a new language. Hopefully it is. Narration or stories or whatever are very good, but it's a secondary part to it. The first part is really learning to speak the language and having people speak to each other. No, it won't start with, how are you today, or what do you do, or what. You go into the program in the way that it's actually set out. Whether you learn, first of all, the news headlines, or whether you learn this or that, or politics, doesn't matter. You have started to speak. You break through to speaking. Not all courses start the same, thankfully. It doesn't start with how are you, or where are you going, or what do you do, or what your work is. Sometimes you have to take it from a different direction. So we also have in the course the different stages that people take and their feelings. I had to learn to speak. I understood Gaelic, but I didn't learn to speak it reasonably well until I was about 16. I went through all these different things myself. I used the radio. There was a 20-minute program in terms of politics, which I liked, and used the radio with one tape recorder and another tape recorder, listened to it, taped that program and listened to it, and spoken to the second one. And sometimes you come to the stage where you can say the thing before the person on the radio or on your tape. Speaking helps your facial muscles, your throat muscles, your tongue muscles. Listening, we have hundreds, if not thousands, of people in our communities who can understand Gaelic but cannot speak it. It does not come on its own. It's like you're swimming. You have to jump into the water to swim. I can't swim. I never go into the water. You have to do it. The facial muscles and the throat muscles are really the basis of speech. And what's written, certainly in our language on paper, some of it is 800 years old. The language of the paper or the book is not the same in any kind of way of the language that is spoken in our community. They are different. They are really different. The skills that are required are different. So, can I urge you, as I said with regard to this conference, that it's speaking first. The second part of the booklet that we have here that goes with the course is what the student will do, what the student feels, the different stages that they go through, the different problems that they have, how to solve these problems. How can anyone write a course without putting beside it what the student is going to do, what they're going to feel, when they're going to be speaking, how they're going to be speaking? I've never understood that. Never understood it at all. It's as if all they did was put this thing together and threw it to the wind. Doesn't really matter whether it works or not. I want to see another 70,000 Gaelic speakers in Scotland. Most of the people in Scotland give up whenever there is a difficulty. Whenever there is a difficulty. And until we start giving them answers to these difficulties, they're going to give up even more. You have to answer and know the difficulties that are going to arise with your courses. whether it be an adult or whether it be a child. If it's an adult, then they have to know beforehand. Why would you do something without knowing what the end result is going to be? Or why aren't you getting the answers to the problems that you know will arise? We know after 5 days that people will feel really angry and frustrated that they can't grasp some of the words, or all of the words, or even 2 or 3 of the words. We know that they're going to go through different stages. How do we know it? Most of the things we've done ourselves, or we've actually spoken to people who've gone through that system. It's not difficult to find out and to write out what stages the student is at, what they have to do, how they prepare for a course to be established, the workplace and where are the places that they're going to do the course. All these things you need to work out. All of them. Every single one of them. If you're going to be working, for example, with adults who stopped speaking at 3 because of language tantrums and the parents didn't know how to deal with it, now they're 22 or 23 years of age or 25 years of age, you need to know how to build up that person's confidence. You need to know what caused the tantrum in the first place. Every child that I know of that has been Gaelic speaking and then learned English goes through a language tantrum. It may be 2 years of age, 3 years of age, 4 years of age, 5 years of age. They simply stop speaking. Or you speak to them in Gaelic and they answer you in English. Very easy solution to that. Extremely easy solution to that. And that is, you say to the child, I know you speak English, but if you're going to talk to me, it has to be in Gaelic, or I won't answer you. I simply won't answer you. Now, I know of one family where that went on for 7 days. None of the parents would answer the child. And suddenly the child started speaking again. Never looked back. It was simply a language tantrum. A normal language tantrum. Just the same as a child throwing a ball or throwing a car or throwing food on the floor. It's simply a language tantrum. Nothing more, nothing less. Nothing. It's not unusual. But we've lost probably about 3,000 Gaelic speakers over the last 30 or 40 years because the parents didn't know how to handle the situation. They normally said, we'll continue speaking Gaelic and the child will come back to speaking Gaelic. It doesn't happen. They lose confidence. So a 20-year-old or a 22-year-old or a 25-year-old won't even bear hearing the language in their company. They don't want to know about it. They have lost confidence. Now, if they are wanting to come back to it, and some do, but really I would have thought it's less than 1 in 100. What you have to do is to build up the confidence in terms of speaking. This course is really good because they can do it all on their own. Doesn't matter how many mistakes they do. What's that? Every child, every person learning a new language has to make mistakes. That's part of learning. Just quite odd if they didn't. The other thing that is very, very keen, or people are very keen on in terms of the Gaelic language, is the speed of the language, the rhythm of the language, the intonation. All these things you can develop without any difficulty at all. Not difficult at all. If you're wanting a particular accent, you work with what's called over-articulation. Very easy. Really easy. It's not difficult. I can say it's not difficult because I know how it works. And that's really why we put this course together. So that other people, I'm not sure if these problems occur in your communities or with your languages. All of them occur with us. We have the situation of parents sending their children to Gaelic language schools and they stop speaking Gaelic at home because they think the school is going to do the job for them. Rubbish. It can't. Even if there were magicians, they couldn't do it. Also, the language of the school is so narrow. Really, really narrow. Incredibly narrow. 10% of the language of the school is applicable to the home. That's all. 10%. But what it does do is it opens doors in all different kinds of ways. Every kind of way. It enables the people to speak. But we have found throughout the years that children going to Gaelic medium schools, it's not enough. And I've got to say, I set up 150 preschool groups and 60 Gaelic language schools over a period of 30 years. I'm just saddened that I didn't know that it's the adults that count much more than the children if you want a sustainable community. Really, it makes such an enormous difference when you think of your community as a main resource and the family as a building block. Really, what a difference it makes. What an enormous difference it makes. We've been very fortunate in Scotland in the last 3 months. We've just had an announcement that all children between 3 and 5 years of age will get 30 hours a week free in preschool education. Gaelic medium, it's going to be free, 30 hours a week. And also, about a third of the children between 2 and 3 years of age are going to get 30 hours free as well. The parents won't be paying for it. If they need additional childcare, they have to pay for that themselves. But started off at 12 hours, then went to 15, and now it's 30. It's going to be going up to 30 hours within 3 years, a third each year until 2020. But sadly, for the Gaelic medium, if the parents aren't using the language in the home, you have no chance of intergeneration transmission. None. All it is, they learn the language of the school, and when they're outside it, it's lost. They say that in the English-speaking areas of Wales and also of Ireland, that only 1% of the children who come from English-speaking homes, who don't speak the language in the home, are able to pass it on to the next generation. 1 out of every 100 children. Why? Because the children don't know the language of the home. They don't know the language to talk to a baby. So what happens is, it goes into the cycle that, as it's been happening in Ireland for almost 100 years, children go into an Irish medium school, they learn the language of the school, they come out at 16 or at 18, they marry, the intentions are that they're going to raise their children up as Irish speakers. The parents don't have the language to use with the baby. They try to use it very often, but they simply don't have that language, the specialist language that you require. They don't have the language of the use of home or in the home. It's just not there. Why would we expect a parent to pass on a language who, even though they got it in school, they don't have the terms. They don't have the terms of endearment. They don't have the terms in terms of walking. At bath time, at feed time. They don't have these things. Why would you expect it? Why are you expecting miracles? Why are you expecting the impossible? You can't do it. And that 1% have normally gone into teaching jobs or normally gone into broadcasting connected to the language itself, and many of them feel ashamed if they haven't at least translated things. And that's a big problem because you're anglicizing the language. Translating anglicizes any language at all. So what you're doing is you're taking the ideas in from English, you're taking the songs, you're taking the poetry, you're taking all the different things, the nursery rhymes, all of them are coming in from English. So rather than your own language, The value systems are coming from English. So you really have to consider what's there and what enormous resources you have in your community if you have things that are taped. And if you don't, get down to it straight away with the normal, ordinary things that people in 30 years' time are going to require when they're learning. Adults learn faster than children. They're usually also much better in terms of intonation, dialect, speed. One of the big problems we hear of all the time is, oh, organic speakers speak so quickly, I can't keep hold of them, I can't catch the thing. I assure you, you will start to do it after listening to the same tape for 45 times and then speaking into a second tape. Normally, what happens is we don't give enough time for these things to occur. It breaks my heart to hear people saying they give children 45 minutes a week in school. What are you expecting? Miracles? What are you considering? Please, if you can do it, let me know. I'd really like to find how that is done. 45 minutes. How? Where are we living? An adult is awake for 112 hours each week. 112. If they go to a 2-hour evening class once a week, it's another 110 of the hours that they're awake before they come back to it. So this course is really about the time in between. We have courses that go from 1 week to 8 weeks. And usually we can take all the staff, all the students to speaking within 8 weeks quite easily. This is about learning to speak. It's so important that we get out of the way that we've been doing things if we are wanting to save our languages. If we are wanting. And as Chris Harvey said last year, people don't live forever, so your communities will die. You can't preserve a language unless it's on tape. Stones you may be able to preserve, but languages you can't. You cannot do it. I wish you could. I'd really like the recipe for it. But I know of no one who's 1,000 years old. And we are in the 7th generation where English has been in the school, and in some communities, Gaelic is the language of the home still, even though the children went to English language schools. Schools have really very little influence unless you're in a boarding school 24 hours a day where you have no access to any other language other than the language that's in there. And that it's the social language of that school. If you're in a boarding school or a private school, it will kill any other language. It kills it because you don't have access to your own. And a child at 4 or 5 going into these schools, they will have lost it. A child going to a preschool group at the age of 3 will normally lose Gaelic. If it's an English preschool group, they will normally lose it within 10 weeks. Why? It's all around. Television has come into the home. It's all around us. Why do you expect these languages are going to survive if you don't put an enormous effort into it? So, what I would like to finish off with is to tell you that this course is here. It's over 100 pages. And we are trying to find different ways of distributing it. Most of them, if you're wanting a copy of it, you have to go to my Facebook page or the Murray Language Centre Facebook page to get a copy of it. I think it costs about $20 or $21, around that anyway. And you get it sent to you through email in a PDF format. So if you are going to be involved in learning a language as an adult in this way, we need you to know all the things ahead of you. All the things that are ahead of you, so that when a problem arises, you don't think anything of it. It's just normal. Nothing but normal. And the great thing about it is you can really surprise all your friends by them not knowing that you've learned your language. It can be done secretly. It can be done away from the gaze of individuals. You don't have to go to classes. You can do it during the night, during the day. You can do it on the bus, anywhere. So that 6 months of hard work, for us at least, it's beginning to pay off. But we have to change the mindset in terms of our languages. That there is so much material for most languages out there. If we have over 40,000 hours and something, I'm not sure how much more that haven't been catalogued, and we're adding to that about 80 or 90 hours a week through just the radio, I cannot believe that you don't have that amount yourselves. The first thing to do then is to go and find out where the programs are, where the tapes are, what kind of tapes they are. And all kinds can be used given time. Because after you start to speak, narration and all the other things, stories as well, lots of different things can be done. No tape is of little value. Every tape is of value. But please be careful. Translation wrecks languages. They really doesn't help. Really doesn't help. And if you have been doing it that way, well, I'm sorry. I don't know how to get you to change. But from our experience, and the number of Gaelic speakers in Nova Scotia, where I work a great deal, since 2004 has gone from 500 to 2,000 people, and they're nearly all adults. The first generation of 20 or 25 children that are being born into families who have the languages, who are speaking to the child as a first language, will probably be about 25 this year. But the expectation is that because you have about 1,500 to 1,800 10 to 18-year-olds, and they have no schools, 10 to 18-year-olds, that they are going to become the next generation of parents. And they don't live in a very prosperous area. But what they've done is they have knitted the language and the language learning to make it fun. Really fun. It's all young people. Really made it fun through music and in other ways. They have Céilís every week, they have concerts, and they have a marvelous, marvelous social life. The final point of it in terms of Nova Scotia, we're told that it's one of the few communities in North America where the old and the young are working together all the time. Every learner there has to try and find 5 other people that they will work with. And the younger people help them, the older people with the duties or the tasks they have at home of taking in wood, clearing snow, going to the shops. That really is an extremely good community spirit being built, and it's all because of the language. The language was the glue that took them together. Older people help younger people. Now, in another 20 years' time, there won't be one of the original native speakers left. All the others, and I would hope by that time there's about 5,000 people speaking it. At least 5,000, if not more, and speaking it fluently. By that time, all of the older people will have gone. All of them. You won't have what is called a native language community, but they can develop a new native language community quite easily. But the age in which that can happen is really between 10 and 18. They have put the Gaelic language of the home into the school. That's what they teach in the school. So that those children that are actually learning can go home and they can see the thing. It's what's so really nice about the Gaelic in the home is that it's there in front of you all the time. It's part of you. Really is part of you. It's not a way over there, or it's not a way over there. It's in front of you. It's part of you. And what they have done is they have integrated the cultural activities into their daily lives, from music to step dancing, large storytelling, songs. Quite amazing. But without being able to take people to speaking quickly, if it's going to take 50 years, most people give up after 5. So you need to know the problems they're going to face. And thankfully, from what we have done anyway, we think we've answered about 20 to 30 or maybe even 40% of the questions and the problems, and given them solutions. No point having a problem without a solution that actually destroys people. If you're an academic, no problem. The problems are there for you to solve if you want to, or to have another PhD or whatever, to look at the answers that you should really look at. So it can go on for 10 years. But our communities can't sustain that. They need to have people learning really quickly. And adults, at the end of the day, make your community, not children, in terms of it being long-lasting. Thank you very much indeed.